She is a narrated fiction story created for discussion and entertainment purposes.
Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. I never planned to return to my father's land, but when I did, I found a fight waiting. A ruthless HOA claimed my 320 acres as theirs, blocking my driveway and slapping fake rules on my fence. They didn't know I had maps, grit, and nothing left to lose. This was my land. I never thought I'd be back here, not for good anyway. But there I was, driving down the dusty gravel road toward my late father's land, 320 acres of wooded hills, creeks, rock cuts, and silence. Idaho silence, the kind that presses down on you until your ears ring. It had been nearly 15 years since I'd last walked these trails, and now I was moving in full-time, retired early from surveying, sick of the city, tired of clients who thought GPS made you God, and mostly just done. This land was mine now. Mine, legally and by blood. The house wasn't much. Just a one-level cabin with cedar siding and a slanted roof that moaned in the wind. Dad built it by hand in the 70s with no help but a stubborn mule and even more stubborn will. The electricity worked when it wanted to. The plumbing creaked like it had arthritis, and the deck was partially colonized by squirrels. But it was home. My home. South of my property lay Pine Cliff Estates, a planned community of nearly 40 oversized doll houses with slate roofs and driveways you could eat off. They'd been built less than 10 years ago on what used to be grazing land. I barely noticed the place when I visited before. Their perfectly groomed yards didn't interest me. I had 300 acres of trees and solitude. They had 6 feet of lawn and a spreadsheet of bylaws. It was only my second week living on the land when the knock came. Midday. I was fixing the hinges on the back gate when I heard tires on gravel and then footsteps. Crisp, efficient, entitled. When I rounded the side of the house, I found a woman in a pressed beige pantsuit and wedge heels standing next to a thin, nervous-looking guy in a windbreaker with "Compliance" embroidered over the breast pocket. "Mr. Sloan," she asked, as if she already knew the answer and was just giving me the chance to confirm her prophecy. "Depends," I replied, wiping grease off my hands with a rag. "You lost?" Her smile tightened. "Karen Miller. I'm the president of the Pine Cliff Estates Homeowners Association. This is Michael, our compliance coordinator." I nodded, pretending I cared. "Nice to meet you. What brings you to my end of nowhere?" Karen wasted no time. She pulled a folder from her handbag and handed me a thick document. "We're here about your perimeter fence. It does not conform to Pine Cliff's design standards. Also, we show that you failed to register your property as part of the HOA, which was incorporated into the Regional Expansion Plan in 2015. I stared at her. Then I stared at the folder. "Come again?" She cleared her throat. "Your property is now considered part of the extended Pine Cliff community. As such, it's subject to association rules, dues, and architectural compliance requirements. You currently owe $12,000 in unpaid assessments. Also, we expect your attendance at the next community meeting, where we'll be reviewing access easements." I blinked. "Let me make something real clear. This land's been in my family since Nixon. I've got original topographic records registered with the county. No one ever mentioned your little clubhouse before, and I sure as hell never signed anything." Karen's smile never broke, but her tone grew syrupy. "You must not be aware of the regional incorporation changes. It's very common with older properties. I'm sure it was just an oversight." "No," I said. "What's common is people trying to walk over others when they think they can get away with it. Let me save you the suspense. I'm not in your HOA. I don't want to be in your HOA, and I'm not paying a damn dime to people I don't answer to." Karen exchanged a look with Michael, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She pulled out a bright pink envelope and handed it to me. "This is your formal notice of non-compliance. You have 30 days to rectify the violations before we pursue further remedies, including potential property lien and debt recovery." I took it, not because I cared, but because I wanted to read what brand of nonsense they thought would scare me. "I'm going to have to ask you both to leave now," I said, not raising my voice but making it clear we were done here. Karen's smile vanished like a light switch. "You'll regret being uncooperative, Mr. Sloan. This community was built on unity." "I've got 300 acres of disunity," I replied, "and not a damn square inch of it belongs to you." They left, Karen's SUV kicked up dust as it disappeared down the road. I stood there for a moment, staring at the pink envelope in my hand, wondering just how deep this rabbit hole went. I'd heard of HOA horror stories before, people being fined for mismatched curtains or for planting the wrong flowers. But I never thought they'd come after a man who owned more land than the whole neighborhood combined. And yet, here we were. 3 days later, I woke up to a sound that didn't belong. Not birdsong, not the wind, not the creek behind the house. This was heavy. Industrial. I pulled on my boots, grabbed my jacket, and stepped onto the front porch with a thermos in hand, just in time to watch a flatbed truck lower a massive concrete barrier across my driveway. I blinked. The men unloading it wore high-vis vests and no expressions. They moved with that particular kind of bureaucratic precision that told me they were paid not to ask questions. I walked down the gravel path toward them, coffee steaming in the cold air. "Hey," I said, voice calm. "Who ordered that thing?" One of the workers glanced at a clipboard. Pine Cliff Estates HOA, Community Infrastructure Upgrade. Infrastructure? I raised an eyebrow. "That's my damn driveway." The guy shrugged like I'd told him the weather. "Talk to the HOA, sir. We just do the drops." By the time the block was set and they'd driven off, my truck was still parked behind it, boxed in like I'd been evicted from my own land. I didn't even get the chance to call anyone before the next surprise came. When I circled the long way around the eastern fence line, by foot, I noticed something new. Signs. Fresh plastic signs zip-tied to my fence facing the public road, spaced about every 50 feet. Big, glossy things that read, "Private HOA property, entry by permit only." I stood there, staring at my own damn fence like I was hallucinating. I walked the length of the line and counted 12 of them. One even had a phone number to inquire about guest access. It was my number. No, seriously, my own number, listed as the compliance contact. That little flourish made my jaw twitch. It wasn't just signage either. Mid-afternoon, a white HOA maintenance van showed up, and 3 guys in polo shirts and tool belts started walking the property line with measuring wheels and clipboards. I approached them calmly, not wanting to scare anybody. "Afternoon! You're on private land. Mind telling me what you're doing?" One of them looked up. "We're measuring for boundary conformity." "Conformity to what?" He gestured vaguely. "Per Pine Cliff Compliance Review Protocol." I smiled, the kind that doesn't reach your eyes. "Gentlemen, I'll say this once. You step off this property now or I call the sheriff and have you charged with trespassing." They didn't argue. They packed up fast, but not before one of them handed me a printed packet with the HOA's seal on it, listing corrective measures they expected me to take. Fence modifications, landscape alterations, even a notice about unauthorized trail structures, which, for the record, were just deer blinds built by my dad 40 years ago. Enough was enough. I drove 15 miles out to Lake County's sheriff's office, parked behind 2 dusty pickups, and waited 40 minutes for someone to talk to me. Deputy Claiborne was the one who took my statement. Balding, mid-50s, kind of man who looked like he ate cornbread straight from the cast iron. "Look, Mr. Sloan," he said, flipping through the printouts I'd brought. "What you're describing sounds civil. I can't remove their barrier without a court order." "Even if it's on my driveway?" He hesitated. "Depends on whose map you believe." I stared at him. "You're telling me someone can show you a new map and claim my house as theirs?" He raised his hands. "I ain't telling you it's right, just that I've seen stranger things. They've got documentation. HOA issued a neighborhood-wide map in 2015, claims your land is within their jurisdiction. My documents predate their existence by 40 damn years." "I hear you," he sighed. "But until a judge says otherwise, it's a gray zone. Civil court. My advice? Get yourself a real estate litigator. You're going to need more than attitude and a good story." That night, I sat in the dark with a bottle of whiskey and spread out every map, plat, deed, and topographic survey I had on the dining table. My dad's old topo map from the 70s was still perfectly intact, rolled in a tube with his name and signature at the bottom. I laid it beside the county's current GIS overlay. Then I opened satellite imagery. Something was wrong. On the HOA's updated boundary map, their community extended nearly 200 feet into what my father had labeled the Southern Woods. Their Phase 2 development, those homes built in the last decade, weren't just close to my land. They were on it. At that moment, I felt the shift. This wasn't about signs or fences anymore. It was about land. My land, misappropriated and quietly folded into a development like it had never existed as mine in the first place. And nobody, not a single person in that HOA, had ever bothered to ask if I noticed, but I had now. The next morning, I called up an old contact, Samantha Delaney, a real estate attorney I'd worked with years ago on a messy easement case between a church and a cell tower company. She was sharp, no nonsense, and didn't flinch at dirty developer games. I drove into town with a folder full of deeds, plat maps, and historical surveys. We sat down in her office, and within 20 minutes, her eyebrows were halfway up her forehead. "Matt," she said, tapping the aerial map with her pen, "if this overlay is accurate, at least 17 houses in Pine Cliff Estates are partially or completely built on your land." "Yeah," I said flatly, "and their pool house, and their private trail, and what looks like a decorative duck pond." She whistled low. "Have you ever granted an easement or sale on this portion?" "Nope, not a damn inch." She leaned back in her chair. "Then what you've got is textbook encroachment, and if they built knowingly, we might be looking at fraudulent development." I liked the sound of that. Fraud had a certain sting to it. We started digging. Samantha pulled parcel records, building permits, title transfers, anything public. What we found was interesting. In 2014, Pine Cliff's original land development permit showed a southern boundary that lined up perfectly with my father's maps. But in early 2015, an amended permit was filed, quietly, without a public notice. That version had shifted the southern boundary north, eating up roughly 60 acres of my land. The signature on that document? A former county planning officer named Alan Varner. Samantha's lips tightened when she saw the name. He was fired in 2016 for procedural misconduct. Got caught rubber stamping zoning variances in exchange for campaign donations. "So, this is looking better for me?" I asked. "Oh," she said, "you have no idea." But things didn't stop there. Using old drone footage and GIS data, we layered construction timelines over historical satellite imagery. Turns out Phase 2 of Pine Cliff, the section overlapping my land, had been completed in stages between 2016 and 2019, meaning HOA leadership had known the whole time that those houses were right on the edge, or past it. Samantha pulled the final nail from the coffin. An email thread obtained via FOIA request between the original developer and a county survey contractor. In it, the developer wrote, "Don't worry about the forest line. Owner's an old man, place is vacant. No one's going to challenge 60 trees." I stared at the screen. My jaw tightened. That old man was my father. Those 60 trees were our backyard. We sent out letters of intent to pursue legal action to the HOA board, the Pine Cliff developer, and the residents of all 17 encroaching homes. By law, they had 30 days to respond. And respond they did. 2 days later, a realtor in Pine Cliff called Samantha's office, frantic. One of the affected homeowners had tried to refinance their mortgage, only to discover that their entire house sat on land they didn't own. The lender froze the process immediately. That was the first domino. The others fell quickly. Insurance agents called. Panic emails circulated. HOA emergency meetings were scheduled. I wasn't invited, but a neighbor who worked at the print shop slipped me a copy of one agenda. Item 3, potential legal retaliation from Sloan. Damn right. Within the week, the gloves came off. It started with a hand-delivered envelope, sealed with a gold Pine Cliff HOA emblem like it was the Vatican. Inside, a cease and desist letter accusing me of malicious interference in community affairs and intentional harassment of homeowners. It demanded I withdraw all legal claims immediately or face a countersuit for damages and community defamation. I showed it to Samantha. She laughed out loud. "This is the legal equivalent of a toddler flinging mashed potatoes at the wall," she said. "They're scared, and they should be." We weren't backing down. Samantha filed an official complaint in Lake County District Court alleging trespass, unlawful encroachment, and fraudulent use of private land for profit. We named the HOA board, the original developer, and several unknown John Does in the planning office. We also issued formal notices to the insurance providers of all 17 homeowners, notifying them that their structures stood on land with contested ownership. That triggered policy suspensions. Word spread like wildfire. Pine Cliff's Facebook group went from pools, schedules, and book club reminders to full-blown panic. Screenshots made their way to me. One homeowner posted, "We're going to lose our house over some angry mountain man." Another, "Why didn't HOA tell us this was a problem? We trusted them." That same afternoon, I found 3 anonymous letters in my mailbox. One was polite, almost apologetic, offering to work something out. The second told me to burn in hell. The third had no words, just a printed photo of my cabin with the words "No Hero" scribbled across it in Sharpie. I wasn't rattled. I'd lived through wildfires, forest floods, and a drunk guy shooting a raccoon off my porch in Tucson. But this was getting personal. The day after we filed, local news picked up the story. Idaho man claims subdivision, built on his land, legal battle brewing over 60 acres. The reporter was respectful. I told them the truth. My father's land was stolen piece by piece, under the radar, and now they were trying to bully me into silence. HOA responded in classic Karen fashion. That evening, Karen Miller appeared on local TV, full makeup, blazer too bright for daylight, standing in front of Pine Cliff's ornamental sign. She looked into the camera and said, "Mr. Sloan has chosen to escalate a private misunderstanding into a public vendetta. Our community has done nothing wrong. These claims are hurtful, false, and we will fight them with every legal resource at our disposal." The words misunderstanding and vendetta echoed like a slap. But Karen wasn't done. 2 days later, I got a certified letter from a second law firm hired by Pine Cliff HOA filing a counterclaim. They accused me of failing to maintain proper property records and knowingly allowing Pine Cliff to develop structures with tacit approval. I nearly choked when I read it. According to their twisted logic, my silence over the past decade equaled consent. Apparently, living quietly without raising a fuss was now grounds for forfeiture. Samantha called it a bluff and told me to get ready for discovery. But before we even got that far, she got a call from a third party, a title insurer sounding very nervous. They explained that 2 sales in the affected zone were on hold due to title defects. One buyer had pulled out entirely. Another was threatening to sue the seller. The pressure was mounting. But we weren't finished yet. Samantha had one more trick. She drafted an open letter to all residents of Pine Cliff, offering a formal path forward. Either the HOA pays for the full commercial lease of the disputed 60 acres, backdated 10 years, estimated at $3.2 million, or the homes would be subject to removal orders upon judgment. We mailed it, certified, with notarized land surveys attached. The next day, the HOA's lawyer called us directly. We'd like to discuss a settlement. The settlement discussion turned out to be more of an ambush. Samantha and I walked into the downtown Boise law office with everything in order, copies of the surveys, historical title chains, aerial overlays. The conference room looked like a real estate Cold War bunker. Karen was already there, flanked by 3 attorneys and one gray-haired man I recognized from Pine Cliff's promotional videos. The original developer, Stanley Rourke, the guy who'd sold half a suburb on a handshake and some glossy flyers. The lead attorney, a smug man with polished cufflinks and no soul in his eyes, wasted no time. "We're prepared to offer your client a good faith resolution to this unfortunate confusion," he began, sliding a folder across the table. Samantha opened it, then smirked. $500,000. "Correct. In exchange, Mr. Sloan would relinquish all claims to the disputed Southern Tract, agree to a non-disparagement clause, and sign a covenant not to interfere with HOA operations moving forward." I leaned forward, looked right at Karen, and smiled. "I'll give you $500,000 right now if you admit on record that you knew damn well you were building on stolen land." She didn't answer. She didn't even blink. Samantha closed the folder. "We're done here." Karen's lawyer didn't even flinch. "Then you leave us no choice." That same night, things escalated from legal to ugly. Someone dumped roofing nails all over my driveway. Not a few, hundreds. Took me 2 hours to clean them up, and I still had to tow out my truck with 2 flat tires. Then the following morning, I woke up to find a dead possum nailed to my fence with a sign that said, "Stay off our land." I filed both police reports, but the deputy just frowned. Proof's gonna be hard unless you've got cameras. So I bought cameras, a dozen of them, motion-activated, night vision, infrared. If a squirrel so much as blinked on my property, I was gonna have it on tape. That's when the stories from Pine Cliff started trickling in. One by one, homeowners began contacting Samantha, quietly, off the record. Most were terrified. They hadn't known their houses sat on disputed land. They hadn't been told about the lawsuits or the insurance issues until the refinancing and title freezes hit them like bricks. One woman, Judith Lambert, Lot 34, was nearly in tears when she called. "My husband just retired," she said. "We put everything into this place, and now they're saying our title's defective and we might be forced to sell." Samantha told her the truth. If the court ruled in our favor, they'd either have to lease the land or remove the house. But she also explained that none of this was their fault unless they joined the countersuit. 2 days later, Judith emailed us a full HOA board meeting transcript leaked by her son, who worked in IT. It was like striking oil. In the transcript, Karen explicitly told the board, "We're going to pressure him until he folds. He doesn't have the stomach for this. These people don't want to hear they're squatters. We have to control the message." Another gem from Stanley Rourke. "That boundary's been gray for years. We just painted it darker." Samantha grinned like a wolf. "These people are done." We filed the transcript as part of a motion to expand the claim to include conspiracy to defraud. The judge didn't even hesitate. Motion granted. HOA tried to rally. They sent out glossy flyers calling me a bitter recluse exploiting legal loopholes. Karen gave another TV interview in front of a fake protest made up of about 7 bored teenagers holding signs that read, "Protect our homes." But the damage was done. The residents were cracking. The insurers were pulling out, and their own words were about to bury them. I didn't expect them to try the county recorder's office. That move surprised even Samantha. We got the call early on a Tuesday. A junior clerk from the Office of Land Records tipped us off, whispering like she was part of a spy ring. Someone submitted updated boundary maps. They're flagged as revisions to your father's 1970s plat filings. Samantha and I drove down there immediately. The folder handed to us made my jaw tighten. There they were, new adjusted topographical maps showing the Pine Cliff Estates boundary line extending 200 feet south, cutting a clean line right through the disputed forest zone. They even had fake coordinates and a phony surveyor's name, J.T. Hensley, PLS number 008943. Samantha checked the license registry. No such person. The signatures were traced, not signed. The stamps were photocopies. One form had a notary seal with a date that didn't even exist, February 31st. It was such a lazy forgery it almost felt like an insult. Samantha marched into the county clerk's office and filed an emergency motion to invalidate the filing as fraudulent. By noon, a judge issued a temporary injunction freezing all land record activity tied to Pine Cliff. The scandal began to leak. That night, the local Channel 9 reporter showed up at my gate. "Mr. Sloan, is it true that Pine Cliff Estates forged county land documents to take over your property?" I didn't say yes. I just handed her a printed copy of the fake survey and said, "You tell me." The next morning, the headline read, "HOA fraud. Pine Cliff accused of land theft and forgery." That's when everything started to fall apart. For them. Residents began flooding HOA email lists with demands for answers. A few of them posted photos of their title documents with mismatched lot descriptions. Someone uploaded a video of Karen screaming at a neighbor who dared question the board. The HOA board scrambled to contain it, but it was like trying to stop a wildfire with a wet napkin. Samantha subpoenaed the Planning Commission, and within 48 hours, we had internal emails between Karen, Stanley Rourke, and a former county assessor named Eldon Myers, the same guy who approved the original development a decade ago. One line stood out like blood on snow. "Boundaries ambiguous enough. Just file it, Eldon. We'll take care of the rest." That same Eldon was now retired in Arizona, but his signature was all over the illegal filings. Samantha sent a formal notice to the DA's office. The fraud case was now officially criminal. Karen, meanwhile, doubled down. She posted on the HOA's official site that I had doctored documents, that I was harassing seniors, and that she was doing God's work, keeping our community together. That same night, I received a letter in the mail with a picture of my house in crosshairs. No return address, no message, just the photo. I turned it over to the sheriff's office. This time, they took it seriously. A patrol car parked outside my gate for the next 2 nights, just in case. I wasn't scared. I was furious. I set up a new motion to seek immediate removal of all HOA structures encroaching on my land pending the outcome of the trial. It was bold, aggressive, and absolutely justified. They wanted to play dirty? I was done playing at all. By the time the emergency hearing came around, the courtroom felt like a small-town version of a national scandal. Local reporters filled the back rows, flanked by HOA residents whispering to each other with pale, nervous faces. Karen sat at the plaintiff's table with her lawyer, an overconfident man in a shiny suit who clearly thought this would be an easy slam dunk. He was about to have the worst day of his career. Samantha opened strong. She laid out the original land grant, the recorded topo surveys, satellite images, the fraudulent filings, and finally, the internal emails between Karen, the developer, and the now disgraced former assessor. You could almost hear the room shift when she read aloud the line, "Just file at Eldon, we'll take care of the rest." Karen's lawyer objected, claiming the emails were hearsay. The judge, thank God for small-town no-nonsense judges, overruled him with a single glance and a sharp, "Counselor, sit down." Then came the kicker. Samantha called a surprise witness, the clerk who'd tipped us off about the forged survey maps. Nervous but resolute, she testified how Karen herself dropped off the altered maps in person, urging them to process them quietly and referencing some fake state-level approval. The judge leaned back in his chair like he'd just seen someone confess on tape. Karen's lawyer went pale. He asked for a recess. Denied. By lunch, the judge ruled in our favor. Temporary possession of the disputed land granted to me, and a freeze on all HOA development or interference until the full civil and now criminal proceedings concluded. But the judge didn't stop there. He referred the case to the county DA for investigation of fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and unlawful encroachment. I walked out of that courthouse to find 4 HOA homeowners waiting outside. One of them, an older man with tremors in his hands, came up and said, "I bought my house 5 years ago. I never knew it wasn't built on legal land. I don't want any trouble. What should we do?" That moment stuck with me. Samantha advised me to send formal notices of encroachment to all 17 homeowners whose houses sat partially or entirely on my land. The letter gave them 3 options. 1. Vacate the land and allow demolition of the illegal structure. Dusra. Enter into a long-term land lease with me at current market rates. 3. Join the class action lawsuit against the HOA for misrepresentation and recover damages from them, not from me. Within a week, 10 families chose option 3. 2 asked for leases. 5 lawyered up and tried to fight it, egged on by Karen. One of them posted a public rant online claiming I was trying to steal their American dream. But the facts were facts. Their deeds were invalid. The structures were, in legal terms, trespassing. Karen's grip on the HOA was collapsing. A recall petition started circulating. By Friday, over 60% of Pine Cliff residents had signed it. Then something unexpected happened. A drone flew over my property late at night. At first, I thought it was just some bored teen. But when I examined the footage from the motion lights, I noticed it wasn't just flying aimlessly. It was scanning my house with infrared. Surveillance. Samantha didn't flinch. "This is intimidation. Document everything. We'll attach it to the criminal complaint." I contacted a private security company I'd worked with years ago and had them install trail cameras, infrared perimeter alarms, and an encrypted off-grid data recorder. If they wanted to escalate, I would meet them at every level with proof, law, and teeth. Less than 72 hours after the drone incident, Karen was arrested on her own front porch. It was surreal. I watched from a distance as 2 sheriff's deputies and a plainclothes investigator from the DA's office escorted her down her neatly trimmed walkway. Her robe was half open, her hair wild. She shouted something about retaliation and deep state conspiracies. One of the deputies calmly read her the charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, property theft, and tampering with public records. Her husband just stood there, slack-jawed, like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. The news spread like wildfire. Local media had a field day. For once, I didn't have to explain anything. The documents, maps, emails, testimony, it all did the talking. That same day, the county DA issued a statement confirming that multiple parties within the HOA, including Karen, her VP Linda Schaffer, and the former land assessor Eldon Deeks, were being charged in a wide-reaching conspiracy involving falsified development permits and forged survey records. Karen was denied bail. By the end of the week, the HOA board had completely disbanded. Half of the residents voted to dissolve Pine Cliff Estates HOA entirely. The other half formed a temporary association just to handle insurance claims and cooperate with the court. I was flooded with calls, some hostile, most humbled. A few residents asked if there was any way to keep their homes. With Samantha's help, I set up a streamlined legal path for leasing or repurchasing land from me under strict notarized agreements. No handshakes, no assumptions, everything recorded, filed, and locked down. 5 homes were too far gone. They stood almost entirely on my forested land, and the structures didn't even align with the fire code setbacks. Bulldozers arrived by court order and took them down one by one. Watching those brand new homes get reduced to rubble, I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel cathartic. The insurance companies turned rabid. They filed their own suits against Pine Cliff's former board and developer. Claims were frozen. Premiums skyrocketed. Several families relocated temporarily, some permanently. In the meantime, Samantha launched a civil suit on my behalf for full compensation for the 10 years of unauthorized land use, estimated around $3.6 million. Add to that legal fees, environmental damage from unauthorized clearing, and punitive damages. The judge granted a preliminary ruling in our favor, pending the criminal trial outcomes. Then came the final cherry on top. One morning, I got a call from a state-level land registry office in Boise. A new administrator had taken over and wanted to meet. He told me, off the record at first, that their audit revealed a small number of other fraudulent entries linked to the same ex-assessor, Eldon Deeks. Apparently, Karen and her crew weren't the only ones who'd benefited from adjusted lines. My case was now part of a larger land fraud investigation. I walked out of that meeting realizing something simple but powerful. They tried to erase me, quietly, strategically, and they almost pulled it off. If I hadn't come back to the land when I did, if I'd shrugged off the letter or ignored the blocked driveway, I'd be bankrupt and watching strangers live on my land. Instead, I stood on the ridge behind my house, overlooking the now quiet Pine Cliff neighborhood, newly surveyed, legally corrected, and finally under control. And I decided what to do next. A month later, I was back in court, but this time it was different. The courtroom was packed. Residents, reporters, county officials, even a few legal observers from neighboring counties who'd heard about the scope of the fraud. The state had consolidated charges against Karen, Linda, and Eldon into a single high-profile criminal trial. I was subpoenaed as a key witness, alongside Samantha and a state surveyor who'd authenticated my father's original topo maps. Karen entered the courtroom in shackles in a drab beige jumpsuit. Her face, once polished and smug, was sunken, pale. She didn't look at me. I didn't need her to. The prosecution opened with a thunderclap, projecting satellite overlays, dated maps, and internal HOA emails showing intentional land encroachment, forged signatures, and discussions like, "Nobody checks that deep in the woods." Their strategy was airtight. Our moment came when Samantha played the audio of that infamous line Karen had once sent her developer. "The old man is dead, his son's in Boise, and the trees can't talk. We'll push the line. It's just dirt." You could feel the shift in the room. Like oxygen had been sucked out of it. The jury didn't need long. By day 3, the verdict came in, guilty on all counts. Karen received 15 years, Linda got 12, and Eldon 14, with a special clause preventing them from holding public or HOA positions ever again. When the judge read the sentencing, I didn't feel triumph. I felt clean. Like the weight of 2 years of gaslighting, obstruction, and invasion had finally been pulled off my chest. People turned and looked at me as I left the courtroom, not with pity or awe, but respect. Outside the courthouse, local media swarmed. I gave a short statement. I didn't fight this to punish anyone. I fought it because I refused to be erased from my family's land. Everyone has boundaries. I just made sure mine were legally visible. In the weeks that followed, things moved fast. The civil suit was settled. The court awarded me $4.2 million in damages, plus the legal right to all structures built on my land. I declined to resell them. Instead, I leased half to families who cooperated during the process and turned the remaining space into a non-profit conservation trust dedicated to forest restoration and public trails. The land now had a name, Boundary Preserve. Fitting. I installed a wooden overlook platform where one of the seized homes had stood. It faced the edge of the forest with a small bronze plaque embedded in the railing that read, "Property is not just what you buy, it's what you protect." One afternoon, A small group of former HOA members approached me during a site tour. The woman in front, Anne, I think, asked if I'd ever consider forming a new HOA to help manage the area. I laughed hard. No more HOAs, I said. This land doesn't need rules, it needs respect. They agreed. It's been 9 months since the verdict, and life finally feels still. Spring rolled in softer this year. I wake up each morning with the sun filtering through pine needles, the creek gurgling faintly past the eastern ridge. No engine noise, no meetings, no fluorescent HOA notices duct taped to my gate. Just peace. My days are slower now, but fuller. I spend mornings walking the boundary preserve, checking trail markers, chatting with hikers, sometimes guiding school field trips. We installed educational panels about land stewardship, topography, and legal land rights. The kids love the map table I built out of old cedar, where they try to draw their own boundaries using compass and string. Most of them mess it up. That's the point. People sometimes stop me and ask if I won, if taking down a corrupt HOA and reclaiming 60 acres was worth the toll. I never know what to say. I didn't start this as a fight. I just didn't run from one. And in truth, I gained more than land. I gained clarity. The community's changed too. Without Karen and her council of control freaks, the residents of Pinecliff formed a new board, less of an HOA, more of a stewardship co-op. I was stunned when they asked me to serve as their interim chair. Me, the guy they tried to evict with concrete blocks? I said yes, on one condition: no dues, no fines, no stupid rules about mailbox paint. We protect property rights. We respect private lines, that's it. They agreed. I led the first few meetings sitting on a tree stump under an old cottonwood, coffee thermos in hand, watching neighbors who once called me hostile, now asking how to file proper permits and respect boundaries. I even helped some of them redraw their own lots, free of charge, with certified surveys this time. No more shady developer lines. No more forged topo maps. Clean slates. As for Karen, I haven't thought about her in a while. Last I heard, she was still trying to appeal her sentence. Good luck with that. One of her old supporters sent me a letter anonymously. No apology, just a line that stuck with me. We built on the wrong land and pissed off the wrong man. I pinned it to my shed wall with a rusty nail. One evening, I sat at the overlook, watching the wind ripple through the treetops. I had carved a phrase into the bench just beneath the wood grain. Ownership isn't power, it's responsibility. I smiled, leaned back, and let the silence settle in. My land, my rules, my peace.
Thank you for watching Is It Narrated Neighborhood Story.